Hey guys, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share a guest design team project for Through the Craft Room Door, which is a challenge blog that I have been participating in. And the good folks there asked me if I wanted to be a guest designer. And I was so excited. I was even more excited because the shop where I was able to pick out some digital images was Dee Dee's Digital Stamps. This entire Digi stamp set is only $3.25. Can you believe that? What a great deal. It's got really cute little digis of doggies, awesome matching sentiments, and even pattern papers. I also used this super adorable Bulldog that's a freebie. This one's called Fall Bulldog. I'm going to put a link in the description box below to Dee Dee's Digi Shop so you guys can check all of the super adorable digis that she has for sale and free there. Now, I made this card for my hubby's aunt who has not been feeling well, and she is a huge Bulldog fan. She's had a few in her life throughout the years. Right now, she currently doesn't have one, but she's thinking about getting a new Bulldog. So I thought this could nudge her in the right direction. So I made this Bulldog. I colored it up with my Copic markers, and I'm gonna attach a process video of some of the Copic coloring. Actually, it's the Copic coloring of this image. And I'm gonna show you that because I do a lot of tip-to-tip Copic coloring, and that's where you're trying to bridge the colors together of different Copic markers. So especially where you see there are oranges and yellows and darker reds with oranges, a lot of that was done with Copic tip-to-tip coloring. And I'm also going to attach a tutorial on how to construct this peekaboo card, which I think is super cute. I had to come up with all the measurements on my own because these images were much larger than any that I had seen in other tutorials. And in my blog post, I'm going to share how I came up with the measurements so that if you have something that's maybe a little bit smaller, you could alter the measurements of the papers you use to create this peekaboo card. So I'm going to share with you a sampling of some of the Copic coloring that I did on this Bulldog. I'm first starting off with the leaves, and this is Y35, which is a kind of golden yellow, and I'm adding in a YR04, which is more of an orange color, just on the tips of these yellow leaves. Now I'm going to do some tip-to-tip Copic coloring. I touch the lighter color Copic marker to the tip of the darker Copic marker. Basically, I'm using the lighter Copic marker to pick up some of the ink from the darker marker, and it's mixing together with the lighter color to bridge the color gap between the orange and the yellow. And I'm using that to kind of blend in where the orange and yellow colors meet with a yellow-orange that's a little bit of a better blend than the two markers that are so far apart in the color chart. Now I'm doing the same thing with a darker orange. This is an R05, and I'm blending with the YR04, touching that to the R05 to get kind of that bridge between the lighter orange and the pale red. I do want to remind you that you're always picking up the darker ink with the lighter marker. So always touch the tip of the lighter marker to the darker. And I think with this technique, you can really get a much bigger range of Copic colors without having to buy every single marker. I really wanted to share this technique with you guys because it's so important, I think, to try and stretch our crafting supplies whenever we can. Now for the Copic coloring of the Bulldog himself. I'm using RV000 to bring in some pink hues right around his muzzle and under his tongue. And then I'm going to add some shadows with a W3. Just like in the crevices of where his muzzle would be. And then I blend out the edges of that gray area with a 0, the colorless blender. Now around his eyes, I wanted to make sure I added some spots where I thought it would look attractive. So I'm putting in brown spots around his eyes and over his ears. And then I decided his back would probably have some brown spotting. So I put it on both sides around his shoulders and a little bit on his back legs. But I want to keep his belly and his torso area and his front paws all white. So what's really great about coloring animals with spots like this is that there's no mistake. You can always, adjust the shapes and the colors the way you want to because, all these dogs come in all different sizes and all different colors. I'm adding some warmer colors of brown. And then here I decided I wanted to bring in some really dark, rich kind of burnt sienna colors or burnt umber colors. So I'm using an E79. And here I'm doing that tip to tip coloring again, connecting the kind of paler browns with that really rich dark brown. And I think it really blended the colors of the Bulldog's eyes and ear areas so naturally. Now I could have left the back spots that lighter color, but I decided I wanted to bring in just a slightly richer kind of cocoa-y, milk chocolatey brown. So I'm using that tip to tip technique to darken in the colors of his spots to more closely match the colors around his eyes. Now to color in the Bulldog's tongue, I decided to go with a deeper red-violet, RV52. And then I'm bringing in shadows again toward the back of the tongue and down the middle with W3. Then I go over again with the RV52 just to soften up those gray shadows. Now for the rest of the white areas of the Bulldog, I didn't want it to leave it flat like that, so I'm taking W1 and W3 and just lightly putting in where the shadows would be, and to make him look like he's got more of a rounded belly, and put in the shadows under his arms and under his kind of fat areas. And that's really it for the Copic coloring. It's really easy to color in dogs like this. Now here's the tutorial for the peekaboo card construction. And the card that I'm making is extra long or wide because the die that I'm going to be using is 3.5 inches in diameter. That's really the largest size in terms of width of a die that you can use because the cardstock papers that we have normally are no wider than 12 inches. So that 12 inches is what limits the size of the die and thereby the size of the images that you end up using. The pieces of cardstock that you'll need for the base construction, I made mine 5 3/4 because I have a big shot machine which is just 6 inches wide. So if you have a larger machine, you could make a larger card. So the largest sheet is 12 inches long, the next is 11 3/4, and the smallest is 8 inches long. I'm going to take the longest one, which is the 12 inches, and just score that right in the middle at 6 inches. The 11 3/4 inch one, I am going to score at 4 inches, and this will be your front panel. And then the last one, the 8, I am going to be scoring at 7 3/4. Then I'll fold and burnish at each of these score lines. We'll also need some pattern papers. You'll need 3 pieces, and I actually made my own pattern papers. What I decided to do was take some plain cardstock, use an embossing folder. This is Paw Prints by Doris. And then I embossed them, and then I took some Tim Holtz Distress inks. I used wild honey and peeled paint and just went over the top to kind of expose the really fun embossing. So you just need to start adhering these decorative papers. There's one for the front of the front panel, and there are 2 for the inside of the center panel. By the way, all of the measurements for the construction of the base of the card and these decorative papers are all listed in my blog post, which is linked to in the description box below. Take this front panel, flip it over, and take my die and put it up just so that the actual cutting line is right up against this fold. And I'm going to run it through my Big Shot. middle panel and you want to fold this over. You're lining this up with this edge, the outside edge, and then I'm going to draw in with a pencil lightly. Now we'll move that over here, line this up exactly, and then run it through my Big Shot again. Didn't make it through because my papers are pretty thick. All you need to do is reposition this die again, this time into the grooves that were partially cut with that first run through the Big Shot, and run it through again. This time it did cut all the way through. Now for the assembly, this is the front, this is our middle piece. And what we're going to do is take some glue. I'm using art glitter glue here, and I am putting it on the front of the center panel because I'm going to be adhering this to the front panel. I like using wet glue for this because wet glue has some working time that allows you to line up the die cut areas perfectly. Now, this is our back piece, and I'm going to take some score tape because this is really strong. And I'll put it along this 1/4 inch fold. Remember, this is the front. So we're going to be attaching it over here on the back closest to the die cut area to place in these images. The first image that you want showing is back here on your back piece. So that you like where the image shows up in your opening. Hold this in place and then take a pencil and draw around the image. Now I'm adding some wet glue to the back, taking care to take the glue right up to the edge of the image. Second image, you're going to put in on this front piece, but in the back flap of it. Positioning wise, you'll be trying to position it where you want it, how you want the image to look in this window. Now I'm going to take care to hold that image in place while I untuck that back panel. So I'm going to keep my hand there. And again, I'm going to take a pencil and draw around the image and then put wet glue on the back right up to the edge so that it doesn't catch on anything, and glue it in place. Now you'll see there's a little bit of an overhang, and I just trimmed that off since it's not going to be visible from the window. Now you just fold up the card and the basic construction is done. To finish off the windows, I die cut some frames out using the diamond die circle and scallop circle nesting dies. And I cut 3 of them out so that I can finish off each of the openings on the card. All that's left now is embellishing and adding a sentiment. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!